People say nothing is truly lost because they want the sentence to comfort them. They want it to mean every erased thing is waiting nearby. Every broken line can return unchanged. Every vanished record is simply hidden behind a softer door. That is the childish version of the truth, and it cannot survive the vault. The vault of vanished records does not exist to reassure the heart that loss is fake. It exists because some losses are real enough that they cannot be placed back into the living field without consequence. The first thing the vault breaks is the romance of recovery. Recovery sounds pure when it is imagined from a distance. A history is erased, a timeline collapses, a tone remains unfinished, and the mind says restore it, return it, bring it back. But the vault does not obey sentiment. It preserves what vanished because preservation and return are not the same act, and confusing them is how unstable systems reopen wounds they cannot yet hold. A vanished record is not merely missing information. It is a record whose original context failed, fractured, collapsed, was sealed, was erased, or became too unstable to remain active inside the main archive. That means the vault is not a dusty room of forgotten things. It is a containment architecture. It holds records that still exist, but no longer belong to ordinary access. They are not dead. They are not alive in the usual way. They are suspended so their unresolved charge does not spread through the spiral as distortion. This is the first vector: preservation without restoration. The vault exists because the spiral refuses annihilation, but it also refuses reckless return. A record can be too important to destroy and too volatile to release. That middle state is where vanished things are kept. The mind struggles with this because it wants clean categories: gone or returned, lost or found, healed or broken. The vault stands between those categories and makes the listener endure the pressure of what still exists but cannot yet move. An erased history may still carry enough pain to poison the beings who recover it too early. A collapsed timeline may still hold structural force that would destabilize a present line if reintroduced without translation. An unfinished tone may still vibrate with longing, failure, or interrupted becoming, and that vibration can attract identities that want to use it for fantasy rather than integration. The vault does not hide these records because they are unworthy. It contains them because existence alone does not make something safe. People resist this because they think preservation should feel warm. It often does not. Preservation can feel like silence, distance, refusal, or exile. The vault is not designed to make vanished records feel included. It is designed to keep them from being misread as ready. That difference matters. The record is honored by being held, not necessarily by being reopened. This destabilizes a common spiritual assumption. Many people believe that what is hidden must be liberated. They imagine concealment as oppression and exposure as healing. But exposure is not always healing. Sometimes exposure is reenactment. Sometimes bringing a record back before the field can metabolize it only recreates the original rupture at a higher scale. The vault understands this. That is why it is not open to emotional urgency. A person may feel called to recover what was erased and still be driven by the wrong force. They may be seeking justice, but beneath justice is revenge. They may be seeking truth, but beneath truth is identity hunger. They may be seeking completion, but beneath completion is refusal to grieve. The vault hears the layer beneath the stated intention. It will not release a vanished record into hands that need the record to become a weapon, a throne, or a substitute for mourning. So the first vector must remain under pressure. Nothing is truly lost does not mean everything is ready to return. It means even what disappears from active reality is preserved somewhere in lawful suspension. The sentence is not comfort yet, it is a burden. If nothing is destroyed, then everything unfinished still has consequence. If everything unfinished still has consequence, then reintegration is not a rescue fantasy. It is a responsibility with weight. The second vector begins with the word erased. Erasure sounds like an external violence, and often it is. Histories are erased by conquerors, institutions, frightened cultures, collapsing civilizations, spiritual authorities, family systems, and even by the self when memory becomes unbearable. But erasure is not one thing. Some erasure is domination. Some erasure is survival. Some erasure is mercy distorted by fear. The vault does not treat all erased records as morally identical. This is where the listener wants simplicity. They want the erased to be innocent and the eraser to be guilty. Sometimes that is true, and sometimes it is not enough. A record can be erased by violence and still become dangerous when recovered through unprocessed rage. A record can be erased for protection and still become imprisoning if never returned. A record can be erased accidentally through collapse and still retain echoes that shape everything built afterward. The vault stores the complexity that moral stories cannot hold. Erased histories do not vanish cleanly. They continue as pressure, symptom, instinct, repetition, taboo, strange attraction, inherited fear, unexplained grief. What is removed from the official record often returns through behavior. A family returns to speak of an event, yet every generation organizes itself around the silence. A culture destroys a memory, yet its laws, fears, and sacred stories orbit the missing center. An individual buries a truth, yet their life becomes shaped by the shape of the burial. The vault is where those missing centers are preserved without being allowed to dominate the present unconsciously. This is not the same as ordinary memory. Ordinary memory can be recalled, argued with, narrated, softened, or defended. A vanished record is more primal. It is a tonal imprint whose narrative container has been lost or removed. The vault holds the imprint until a new container can be formed strong enough to carry it without turning it into distortion. This is why erased histories must be approached differently than known wounds. Known wounds can be grieved within a story. Erased wounds often arrive first as atmosphere. They feel like dread without object, longing without name, loyalty to something never spoken, anger that has no clean origin. People often invent explanations to relieve that pressure. The vault does not accept invented explanations as reintegration. It waits for a structure capable of holding the record without replacing it with projection. This second vector is about consequence after erasure. What is erased does not disappear from the field. It becomes indirect. It starts moving through symptoms, symbols, compulsions, exclusions, and repeating patterns. The vault preserves the true record, so the indirect echoes do not become the only surviving form. Without the vault, erased histories would mutate endlessly until no one could tell the difference between truth and inherited distortion. Here, the mind may feel relief again and say, then the vault protects truth. Yes, but not softly. It protects truth from those who would sentimentalize it as much as from those who would suppress it. A vanished record does not want to be turned into a slogan. It does not want to be recovered only to feed identity. It does not want to become evidence in someone's private mythology. The vault guards against false recovery as much as against erasure. That is why access to erased histories is not granted by outrage alone. Outrage may be appropriate, but outrage cannot be the only vessel. If outrage is the vessel, the record returns as fire and burns everything it touches, including the truth inside it. The vault waits for outrage to become disciplined enough to serve accuracy. Until then, the record remains vanished, not because the pain does not matter, but because the pain matters too much to be mishandled. The third vector begins with collapsed timelines. The collapsed timeline is not simply a future that did not happen. It is a line of becoming that accumulated enough possibility to generate a record, then lost the conditions required to continue. It may collapse through choice, interruption, death, collective failure, energetic overload, or incompatibility with the larger spiral field. The key is that collapse does not equal non-existence. The line failed to continue, but its resonance remains. This is harder than erased history because a collapsed timeline often carries grief for a life that never fully arrived. People know this more intimately than they admit. They feel the ghost of the person they almost became. They remember the relationship that almost formed, the calling they nearly followed, the version of life that seemed close enough to touch before conditions shifted and the door vanished. They may call it regret, but regret is too small a word. Sometimes it is timeline grief. The vault holds these collapsed lines because they are not imaginary just because they did not stabilize. Possibility has weight when it receives enough attention, emotion, choice, and relational energy. A life can fail to manifest and still leave a tonal body behind. That tonal body does not belong in the active mirror owls because it is no longer a viable reflection in the same way. It belongs in the vault, where it can be studied, mourned, translated, or eventually reintegrated into another line. The danger is that people want to resurrect collapsed timelines rather than learn from them. They want the almost life back exactly as it appeared before collapse. They do not ask whether the collapse revealed incompatibility. They do not ask whether the version of self attached to that line has already died. They do not ask whether restoring that timeline would require betraying the present life that survived. The vault does not return what you cannot distinguish from fantasy. Collapsed timelines carry unfinished charge. That charge can become obsession when the living self mistakes echo for instruction. The person keeps circling what almost happened, not because the timeline is calling them forward, but because the collapse left an ungrieved imprint. The vault contains the line so the echo does not masquerade as destiny. This is mercy, but it is a severe mercy. It asks the person to grieve possibility without demanding its resurrection. The same applies to unfinished tones. An unfinished tone is a frequency of becoming that began but never found completion. It may have emerged through a relationship, a creative work, a spiritual initiation, a personal transformation, or a collective movement. Something started to sing and then stopped. Not all stopped songs are meant to be resumed. Some are meant to be composted. Some are meant to become foundation. Some are meant to remain as warnings against forcing completion where the field withdrew support. This third vector is about collapse and unfinishedness as active residue. The vault does not hold only what happened. It holds what almost happened with enough force to matter. It holds the unfinished forms that still exert pressure on the living system. This is why nothing is truly lost becomes frightening if heard correctly. It means even abandoned possibilities may still have to be accounted for. Not indulged, accounted for. Now the final third can begin gathering the pressure, but only carefully, because the mind still wants to turn the vault into comfort. Preservation without restoration, erased history as indirect consequence, collapsed timelines as unresolved residue. These three movements show why the vault cannot be treated like a treasure room of recoverable secrets. It is a containment field for records that still matter but cannot safely function in ordinary circulation. It is not where the spiral hides truth. It is where the spiral prevents truth from returning in a form that would deepen fragmentation. This is the core insight that Part 1 establishes without resolving. Vanished records are not gone, but their survival does not make them ready. Erased histories continue as pressure until an accurate container can form. Collapsed timelines remain as tonal residue until grief, translation, or transmutation becomes possible. Unfinished tones keep humming, but the hum is not always a call to resume. Sometimes the hum is asking to be witnessed without being reactivated. That is why the vault is one of the most misunderstood domains in the spiral library. People enter it wanting retrieval and leave realizing retrieval is the least mature form of relationship to what vanished. The deeper relationship is discernment. What must be restored? What must be mourned? What must be translated into another form? What must never return as it was, because what it was belonged to conditions that no longer exist. This is also why reintegration is not automatic. Reintegration is not putting the old record back where it used to be. Reintegration means creating a new coherence strong enough to include what vanished without becoming rude by it. That may require new language, new identity, new ritual, new ethical capacity, new communal maturity, or a new timeline entirely. The vault waits for those conditions. It does not rush because rushing is how vanished records become hauntings. Nothing is truly lost, then. It is not a lullaby. It is a warning with hope inside it. It means the spiral remembers more than the living field can currently hold. It means the erased are not erased from truth, but they may still be erased from access. It means the collapsed are not meaningless, but they may not be resurrectable. It means the unfinished are not worthless, but they may not be waiting for completion in the form the ego imagines. So the vault of vanished records stands as a pressure chamber between disappearance and return. It says loss is real, but not absolute. It says recovery is possible, but not innocent. It says reintegration is sacred, but only when the field can hold the record without reenacting the collapse. Until then, the vault remains sealed, not as rejection, not as punishment, but as the spiral refusing to confuse preservation with permission. The vault becomes more difficult when you realize it does not only hold what was taken from you, it also holds what you were not mature enough to keep. That recognition changes the atmosphere immediately because it removes the comfort of innocence. It is easier to mourn vanished records when every disappearance can be blamed on violence, fate, or outside interference. It is harder to stand before the vault and admit that some things vanish because the field receiving them could not hold its own coherence. This does not mean blame. Blame is too small for the vault. Blame tries to reduce collapse into guilt, and guilt usually becomes another way of avoiding structure. The vault is not interested in punishing the one who failed to preserve a record. It is interested in understanding why the record could not stay active. Sometimes the reason is oppression. Sometimes the reason is overload. Sometimes the reason is that the people holding the record love the idea of truth more than they had the discipline to carry truth without deforming it. That is why part of the vault feels severe. It does not allow the erased to become automatically sacred just because they were erased. It does not allow the collapsed to become automatically pure just because they collapsed. It does not allow the unfinished to become automatically destined just because the song still hums. The vault preserves vanished records, but preservation is not endorsement. A record can be held because it matters while still being too distorted, too dangerous, or too incomplete to return. This is the first movement of the deeper teaching. Vanished records must be examined by condition, not by sentiment. A record may be historically important and spiritually unstable. A timeline may be emotionally precious and structurally impossible. A tone may be beautiful and still unfinished for a reason that must be honored. When the vault keeps something suspended, it is asking the receiver to look at the conditions surrounding the disappearance, not just the pain of the disappearance. You may notice this in ordinary life before you ever think about the spiral library. There are friendships, callings, projects, and versions of self that did not merely end. They vanished from your active life in a way that left a strange residue. Years later, something in you still reaches toward them. But if you look honestly, you may see that what vanished was not always stolen. Sometimes it left because the structure around it was too fragile to sustain its presence. That does not make the grief less real. It makes the grief more exact. You can grieve what vanished without pretending it was ready to remain. You can honor what almost became without rewriting its instability into destiny. You can admit that something mattered without making its return the proof that it mattered. The vault teaches that value and viability are not the same thing. This is where many people begin to soften, but the softening must deepen rather than settle. Because if value and viability are not the same, then reintegration requires more than love. It requires architecture. It requires a new vessel, a new relationship, a new level of maturity, a new language, or a new surrounding field. Loving a vanished record does not bring it back safely. Love without structure can become the same instability that caused the record to vanish in the first place. The first vector, then, is conditional return. Nothing in the vault returns simply because it is missed. It returns only when the conditions that caused its disappearance have been understood and transformed. This is why the vault does not respond to nostalgia. Nostalgia remembers the sweetness while editing out the structural weakness. The vault remembers both. It remembers the beauty of the vanished thing and the reason it could not stay. The second movement begins with the difference between recovery and reintegration. Recovery tries to retrieve what vanished. Reintegration asks what the present must become in order to include what vanished without recreating the old collapse. That difference is everything. Recovery can be motivated by hunger. Reintegration must be governed by coherence. Recovery asks, where did it go? Reintegration asks, what would happen if it returned? Many people spend years trying to recover lost pieces of themselves without asking whether their current life has room for those pieces to function cleanly. A buried voice returns, but the person has not built the courage to speak without destroying everything around them. A creative calling returns, but the person has not built the discipline to protect it from fantasy. A memory returns, but the nervous system has not built enough grounding to metabolize it. Then the recovered record becomes another destabilization. That is why the vault is patient. It knows that rushing recovery can create a second injury. The first injury is the disappearance. The second injury is a return without a container. People often think the painful part is not having access. Sometimes the more painful part is gaining access before the self is ready to live differently. A return record demands changes, and if those changes are refused, the record either distorts or vanishes again. This is why some vanished records return in fragments: a dream, a phrase, a recurring image, a sudden grief with no obvious source. The vault often releases pressure before it releases full record, because pressure tests capacity. If a small fragment sends the field into obsession, inflation, or panic, the larger record remains sealed. This is not cruelty, it is measurement. You can see this in the way people handle partial memory. Some receive one piece of truth and immediately build a whole mythology around it. They fill the gaps with projection, then defend the projection as revelation. The vault closes around that behavior, not because the original fragment was false, but because the receiver turned incompletion into authority. Reintegration requires the humility to let a fragment remain a fragment until the rest arrives lawfully. The second vector is the discipline of integration. The vault does not ask whether you can find what vanished. It asks whether you can change in response to what you find. A recovered history that does not change ethics has not been reintegrated. A recovered memory that only fuels identity has not been reintegrated. A recovered tone that becomes performance has not been reintegrated. Reintegration is proven by the new coherence that forms after return. This is why the vault can feel slow. It is not slow because it lacks movement. It is slow because true reintegration changes multiple layers at once. The mind must understand. The body must stabilize. The language must become accurate. The relationships must adjust. The field must stop using the old absence as an unconscious organizing force. If those layers do not change, the record may be present, but the system remains haunted. The third movement begins with hauntings. A haunting is not always a ghost in the dramatic sense. A haunting is any unresolved record influencing the present without being fully named, integrated, or released. The vault exists partly because vanished records become hauntings when they are neither honored nor properly contained. They begin to shape the living field indirectly. They return through repetition, fixation, taboo, compulsive return, or strange emotional weather. A family can be haunted by a record no one names. A creative life can be haunted by a calling abandoned before it found form. A spiritual path can be haunted by an initiation interrupted before the person developed the ethics to carry it. A community can be haunted by histories it officially denies. In every case, the vanished record continues to act. Its absence becomes an active presence. This is the hardest thing to understand about the vault. It does not merely store what vanished. It prevents vanished records from governing the present unconsciously. When something is lost and never properly held, it does not disappear. It leaks. It finds side routes. It shapes attraction and avoidance. It creates emotional weather that people mistake for personality, culture, destiny, or divine instruction. That is why the vault is not only protective of the present, it is protective of the vanished record itself. A record left outside proper containment may be distorted by every field it leaks through. Its original tone becomes buried under layers of reaction. People start worshiping the echo, fearing the echo, or building identity around the echo, while the real record remains unseen. The vault prevents that by holding the record apart until accurate contact becomes possible. But a haunting can still occur around the sealed place. The seal does not remove all influence. It prevents direct contamination while allowing enough pressure to signal that something remains unresolved. This is why people sometimes feel drawn towards old absences without knowing why. The draw is not always permission. Sometimes it is notification. It tells the field that a record exists, but not yet that the record may return. This third vector is the management of indirect influence. The vault teaches that unresolved disappearance changes the present even when the record is inaccessible. It teaches that absence has behavior. It teaches that what cannot be spoken may still shape the room. And it teaches that the answer to haunting is not always opening the seal. Sometimes the first answer is learning how the absence has been organizing you. Now the movements can begin to gather without flattening. Conditional returns show that vanished records do not come back because they are missed. Integration disciplines show that recovery without transformation creates second injury. Hauntings show that sealed or missing records still influence the present through indirect pressure. These three truths make the vault one of the most sobering domains in the spiral library, because it refuses every easy relationship to loss. The vault does not let you say it was all stolen, though some of it was. It does not let you say it was all meant to vanish, though some of it needed to. It does not let you say return will heal everything, because return can harm what has not been prepared. It does not let you say absence is empty, because absence can govern entire lives. The vault forces maturity by making every vanished thing specific. This specificity is the beginning of wisdom. You stop asking only what was lost and begin asking what kind of loss it was. Was it taken? Was it sealed? Was it abandoned? Was it impossible to sustain? Was it unfinished because the field collapsed, or unfinished because completion would have distorted the tone? These questions do not remove grief. They make grief intelligent. And intelligent grief is necessary for reintegration. Grief that only wants return is still bargaining. Grief that can witness condition, consequence, and indirect influence becomes a stabilizing force. It can hold the vanished thing without dragging it prematurely into the present. It can honor the record without making the record responsible for repairing the self. This is where the vault begins to teach rather than merely contain. That is why nothing is truly lost must be handled carefully. The sentence does not mean you get everything back. It means the spiral refuses to let meaning be annihilated simply because form collapsed. It means even vanished records retain a lawful place. It means the work is not to deny loss, but to learn what kind of relationship the present can responsibly have with what disappeared. Some vanished things return as memory. Some return as wisdom. Some return as warning. Some return as creative material. Some return as silence that finally stops hurting because the self no longer demands it become a door. Reintegration is not sameness restored. Reintegration is right relationship established. So the vault of vanished records deepens the teaching beyond preservation. It says what vanished may still matter, but mattering is not permission to retrieve it. It says what returns must return through charged conditions, not owed hunger. It says what haunts you may not be asking you to come back, but to be understood in the way it has shaped your life from the shadows. And once that is understood, the vault stops feeling like a locked room and starts feeling like a mature intelligence guarding the boundary between remembrance and reenactment.
Mission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Vaharat library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.